Welcome back to the Garden Girls podcast. If you're new here, we are Meg, Amy, and Dagny, and our friendship started in a gardening group chat where we talked about all the things going on in our garden, and now we're letting you in on that group chat too. Today is going to be a special Q&A episode, so we asked on all of our socials if you had any questions for us, and you gave us so many questions. So let's crack on and get through them. And the first question I have for you guys is, an evil enemy asks what they should grow in their garden. What plant do you say?
An evil enemy?
Yeah.
Oh, I love this question. I have to think about it. Okay, so an evil enemy asks what they should grow in their garden?
Yes.
Okay.
How are you going to stitch them up?
Okay.
This is like a mind game.
I think I have an answer.
Mm-hmm.
I think I would tell them to grow foxglove. It's a beautiful flower. And then I would tell them that it's also great for a tea garden. And it's
wow.
And it's really great for tea.
Mm-hmm.
It's an evil enemy, right?
Well, they must be pretty evil for that.
Evil, capital E.
They did put it in capital.
Really dark.
Meg's just out here murdering people.
We did just talk about all of these deadly plants. I mean, that was like what my mind went to first.
Yeah, we covered all these in the Halloween episode. So if you haven't watched those or listened to them, go back and have a listen, because we talked about all the ways you could kill your enemies.
I would even give them seeds for my very own garden. I'd be like, these are foxglove seeds. It's a precious plant. It's beautiful and it's great for your tea garden. It's a very healthy tea. Try it.
I was thinking something more along the lines of I don't know how you say this, allelopathic plant, like black walnut, how it actually harms other plants, through what it emits into the soil. So it'll make it really hard for them to grow what they want to grow. But if you want to go straight for murder, I mean, go for it.
Okay, I could tone it down a little bit. We'll go with a super invasive plant like kudzu.
Ooh, brutal.
Yeah, just tell them, it's this exotic ornamental plant from Asia that's beautiful, and then it'll take over their whole garden in months.
Yeah. I was thinking of saying Japanese knotweed, because it is just the worst. You can eat it though. You can eat the shoots. Apparently it tastes like rhubarb. I've never tried it, but yeah. And even if you have that on your land in the UK, you just cannot sell your house. It is so difficult. It's so difficult for people to get mortgages on houses with Japanese knotweed. So I'd probably tell them to grow that.
That's a good one.
So someone asked for tips to avoid back pain while gardening.
This is all we do. This one, obviously elevated beds are going to be the first thing that I would recommend. They're not totally accessible budget-wise for a lot of people. So it's not my go-to recommendation if you've already got stuff going on in your garden. There's this kneeler that I just got from Gardeners that's actually super duper helpful. It's foam padded and you can flip it. So it can be a seat or you can kneel on it. That's really helpful and a lot more accessible for people. What else? Let's see. I also think just kind of managing your time. There's this expectation that when we're in the garden, we kind of need to do a solid block of an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours of work. And I can't do that. And this is my job and I don't do that. So I think even just setting a timer for 10 minutes and seeing what you can get done in that time, it gives you the opportunity to be more mindful and check in with your body as you're going to kind of see if you really can do more or not.
Yeah, I think you can get a lot done in 10 minutes.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, those are great tips. Just minimizing the strain on your back. My fiance is a physical therapist, and so he'll see me out in the garden. He's like, "That's not good form." I'll be hunched over, and I think keeping form is important because it's kind of a method of exercise. You're gardening, you're crouching down. You have to keep your core tight, especially for lower back pain. It's really important if you're crouching down or if you're hunching over to just try to tighten, engage your core, and that protects your lower back.
Think of gardening in the same way as you think of exercise or manual handling. Just make sure to bend those knees,
Yeah, that's right.
Lift with your legs, not your back.
But also just minimizing the work you have to do in the garden in the first place can make a big difference. So that's a big reason why I plant really intensively. You can mulch really heavily so that you don't have to spend a lot of time weeding. Just cutting back on the amount of time you even have to spend doing those tasks will help a lot.
And even if you can't afford like the elevated beds on legs, I think raised beds make it so much easier, even if they're just a foot off the ground, especially if you have beds with like quite thick sides to them that you can lean on. I think that really helps.
That kneeler is great. I have that as well, and that's a huge back saver, I think.
All right, the first question that I had, which I feel like we're going to have some interesting responses to, I'm hoping, is how to get the most harvest per square foot when using raised beds. And I want to challenge this question. I think this is a mindset issue. Like, I don't really love the idea that like we're trying to maximize the space in the garden for harvest. Like, it just doesn't work for me and my what I'm trying to do in the garden, you know?
When I heard the question, I just immediately thought like, okay, you have a square foot and you would plant a tomato plant in that square foot. And then you could kind of go around the edge of that square foot with pollinator plants that double as like herbs you could use. So, like, for instance, basil, that's an herb you can use, but you could also be a pollinator plant if you let it go to flower. Or calendula, that's a pollinator plant, but you could use it for tea. Like, I think maybe just incorporating plants that as beneficial plants for pollinators and bugs, but that you can also harvest as well. Like, I think that's probably a good square foot.
To get the most out of each square foot of your garden, if your priority is to grow as much food as possible, think of everything in like layers. You want like a tall plant, maybe a climbing plant, a mid-level plant, and then like a root crop or like a ground cover, something like that. So just try and have something that does a bit of everything, like one plant at each level, occupying like a different space in the garden. So yeah, utilize the vertical is what I would say.
And succession planting.
Yeah. One thing I've been doing a lot this year is if I have gaps in my garden bed, like I've planted out everything I want, but there's gaps and I want to kind of create like a living mulch that's also edible, is I'll just sprinkle lettuce seeds. They're super shallow rooted and they're usually pretty tolerable as companion plants with pretty much everything. So I'll just chaos sow a bunch of lettuce seeds in the gaps. And so that's kind of also maximizing the space while also providing as like a living mulch and just covering the soil to protect the soil.
Yeah.
So I like a huge fan of doing that this year.
I love lettuce. I've grown lettuce with like everything this year. I've had too much growing in the garden. But that's a good point. And also like thinking about the different lengths of time things take to grow. So like if something's going to take ages to grow, you can grow radishes as well next to it because they'll be like out of the ground before, say, your carrots have grown. So yeah, think about the different lengths of time as well. Just grow like as much variety as possible and you'll probably be able to harvest more, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. But like Dagny had a good point too. Like if harvesting is not your main goal, then that's fine.
Yeah.
Like take it easy. You don't have to maximize your space at all. You can just do whatever you want.
Mm-hmm. Everyone has different goals. Okay. The next question is, what was your biggest gardening fail and what did you learn from it?
Okay, I would say my biggest mistake recently was planting brassicas because I'm just really sick of them. Like, honestly, I keep planting them, telling myself I'm not going to do it anymore. And then I do it again and I just end up really frustrated. And the root of that mistake is actually that I'm not covering my brassicas. That's my mistake. I need to really protect them. And I'm in denial. I'm just in denial. I keep telling myself this time will be different, and it's not. It's a really toxic relationship, honestly, with my brassicas, but really need to just bite the bullet and accept that cabbage white butterflies, they love my broccoli, they love my Brussels sprouts, they love it all, and I have to protect them.
I do exactly the same thing. I plant out my brassicas and I'm like, okay, I need to cover these. And then I just never do. I just never come back to it. And then I look at them and I'm like, oh, they've been destroyed. Great.
Destroyed, like so fast.
I think my biggest fail, I did think of one that was kind of huge, actually, that I'm going to be trying to correct next year. And I don't know how that's going to go. But I decided to plant grapes on a cattle panel trellis. And so I have 2 raised beds connected by a cattle panel trellis. And I was like, oh, I'll plant 1 grape on one side and 1 grape on the other side. And so I planted this grape and it's done really well for like 3 years. It's doing almost too well because the roots of the grapevine are just completely taking over like the entire raised bed that it's growing in. And I really wish that I would have found a way to plant it in ground because I have a hard time planting anything in that raised bed now that I need to like dig because the roots are there. So I'm going to try to take out the grapevine and plant it in ground. But yeah, it's just like a huge hassle that I'm going to have to do now because the grapevine is pretty established on the cattle panel trellis as well. Like it's made its way up the trellis and it's really on there. So I don't know what I'm going to do, but I think that's a pretty big fail. So beware that the roots can get pretty big with grapevines.
Yeah, that is a tricky one. I feel like I am so indecisive with planting anything perennial or anything that's going to last for
Yeah.
years. And a lot of the time I just end up not planting it or like leaving it in a pot for like a year because I just can't decide. It feels too permanent and I don't want to make those kind of mistakes where I have to dig things out, but then I go too far the other way and I just let things suffer in tiny little pots in the corner of my garden.
It is a hard decision. It takes a lot of planning because these things live for years and years and years. So that was like improper planning on my part.
My biggest gardening fail was probably the soil that I put in my first raised beds that I put in the garden. I did not know anything about gardening when I put these beds in the garden, and I asked someone local to just come and drop off some soil to fill them up with, and it was like topsoil, like the worst topsoil that he just like dug off of the side of a mountain, basically. It's really weird. And it is awful. It's just like clay. I just filled my raised beds with clay, which it probably would have been better if I just planted into the ground. And ever since, I've just been like topping it up with compost as much as possible, but it's still not good. I don't know whether to like remove some of it or just, I don't know. But this year I've had my friend come and deliver a load of his really good compost. So yeah, I'm trying to decide how to fix things. I think if I just put a load of it on top and like loads of worms, then it should fix itself. Yeah. But we'll see. But that was a bad mistake.
Maybe start trying to amend it slowly over time. Just load it up with compost or anything you can, nutrients, anything, leaf mold.
Yeah.
Just get that like microbiome going and it'll fix it for you.
Yeah, I've been trying like every single year, but I feel like I just don't add enough compost, enough like organic matter to it. So I need to actually do it this year because it's like 2 really big beds in my garden. So if I could have really good soil in there, it would make everything grow so well. But yeah, big mistake.
Clay is hard. Clay is hard to work with. Like we have a ton of that here in North Carolina as well. And that's like one reason I don't garden in ground because I'm just like, I don't want to deal with it.
Like in this country, because it's so rainy, clay is just like a sticky mess. It doesn't get to the point where it kind of bakes over like I'm sure it does there. It's just sticky and boggy and water just doesn't drain. So
ew, I think that's worse.
Yeah.
I think that's a little worse. I'm sorry.
Yeah, fun. But clay has nutrients in it, so it's not all bad. Like it's not like completely useless. It's just the worst texture.
Yeah. So the next question is, what are all of your favorite bugs? I'm assuming they mean like garden bugs.
I'll give you 2 answers to this because I have a favorite bug just because it's my favorite bug, and then I have like a useful bug. So my favorite bug is probably a dragonfly, just because how cool do they look? They look insane. Like they're just so magical. But in terms of like favorite bug to have around in the garden, probably a ladybird or ladybug, as you guys would say. Because they eat aphids and also they're cute. Like they're just the cutest little bugs ever.
They're so cute. They're my favorite bug to see, I
they're just
think.
so like little and
Just
round.
Adorable.
I know they're not scary. When you see one, you're
Mm.
just like, oh, a ladybug.
Yeah.
I'd say this year specifically a monarch butterfly, just
Mhm.
because I got to watch one actually emerge, which was so beautiful and exciting. But in general, spiders, which I know is not a popular answer because people don't like spiders. But this time of year in September and October, it's spider season here in Massachusetts. And we just, every time I go outside, I have to like have a stick and like be very careful where I'm walking because I'll just get a face full of spider web if I'm not careful. But this webs are so beautiful and they're so good for the garden. Like when they're outside, I love them. When they're inside, not so much.
Oh no. Mm-mm.
What kind of spiders?
We have orb spiders here mostly. Yeah.
We do too here.
Mm-hmm.
I've like a ton. There's an orb weaver that just made a web right in front of my kitchen window. And it's like when I look out the kitchen window, I can like see the garden, but I have to like look through the orb weaver web. It's like
So
she
pretty.
understood the assignment of spooky season.
That's
She
so
did.
spooky season.
She spooked up the house.
We also get a lot of those really tiny, like crab spiders, I think they're called. They're kind of like translucent green, but they're everywhere.
I just killed I only killed them because they are very venomous and I I didn't want to of them. I killed them because I'm scared of them and they're very venomous, but black widow spiders, I killed like 4 of them
What?
in my
Shut
greenhouse.
up.
They love my greenhouse and I'm just terrified of them. And so I don't want to move them into the garden because there's been times where I have reached in to be harvesting something and I've come across a black widow and I'm like, that could have been really bad. I wasn't wearing gloves. So I don't want to introduce them into my garden. I think they're venomous to the chickens as well. So I can't really give them to the chickens to eat. So I just kind of like squish them. But yeah, those are the only spiders that I
We
mess with.
we don't have them here, but I can't imagine like interacting with one even to squish it. Like that would
No.
terrify me.
They're terrifying. They look terrifying
They
too.
do.
Like they look so scary and they are rampant here in North Carolina. And it is something that I have to watch out for in my garden, but especially my greenhouse. They love the greenhouse. They love anything that they can make a web in.
If I saw a black widow in my greenhouse, I would not be going back into my greenhouse ever again.
No.
I'd just be like,
I
nope.
always keep an eye out.
Ugh.
I call them Selena, like if I see them, just because it's like gotta keep an eye out for Selena. You know the song?
I don't know. Do I?
What song is that?
Like the song by Nicki Minaj. She was just like, you gotta keep an eye out for Selena.
Okay. I got
So we call them Selena.
Makes sense.
Maybe I'm the only one that listens to Nicki Minaj.
No,
Okay, cool.
I listened to Nicki Minaj, but I'm just
Okay, you don't know the song I'm talking
I'm
about?
very bad with
Which song is
remembering
that?
lyrics.
Can everyone
and
just
songs
let us
Hold
know
on,
in the
I've gotta look
comments
it.
if you're a Nicki Minaj fan? I'd love to know like
Please.
the crossover between gardeners and Nicki Minaj fans. Thanks.
I think there is one.
Yeah.
People will ask me, oh, this is a good question that I did not get, but people will ask me what I listen to while I'm in the garden, and I'm like, you don't want to know. Like,
So yeah, I call all of them Selena.
Every single one.
Every Black Widow. Because I feel like naming
Mhm.
things like makes them a little less scary.
agree.
So
does it make it easier to murder them too?
Oh,
I get it. I would do
You
the
got a
same
point.
thing. But I'm just saying, usually,
You got
like
a
with
point.
chickens, you wouldn't name them.
never name your murder victims.
They're my enemies. So
I understand. And you're very brave for killing them. I could never. I wish I could.
yeah. If a Black Widow spider asked me what to grow in their garden, I would tell them foxglove.
They probably love foxgloves.
Yeah. They'd be like, cool, venomous like me.
Exactly. I think my favorite bug is a parasitic wasp. A lot of people, when they hear that, they think of the huge wasps that attack you, but they're actually really tiny. They're like the size of an ant. And they are great helpers in the garden. They kill aphids for you. They kill tomato hornworms. So, like, if you've ever been in the garden and you've seen a hornworm and it has those white, like, egg looking things on the back of it, it's actually the cocoons of the parasitic wasps. So it like lays its eggs on the back of the hornworm. The eggs hatch, the larva kind of bores down into it. They make their little cocoons and then they eventually fly out and reproduce, in turn killing the hornworm. So it's just it's like a natural bug killer in your garden, and that's why I love them.
Pretty hardcore. Pretty hardcore.
Pretty hardcore.
Yeah. I also really like all the different tiny wasps and tiny types of bees that you can get, because there are so many different types of bees and I have no idea what any of them are, but some of them are so cute. So cute and tiny.
They are, yeah.
Little native bees.
Mm.
They're the cutest. And a lot of those are like hoverflies as well. They're really great for the garden. The tiny bugs are the best. You like don't know what they're doing, but they're helping you.
Yeah. They must be pollinating so many different things.
Yeah, they're really good pollinators as well, the parasitic wasps too.
If you were a plant, what kind would you be and why?
Oh, that's a tricky one.
I don't know.
Can we do each other? Is it easier if we do each other?
Oh,
We should do each other. Okay.
Because
Oh
I
my
don't know what
God.
I would be, but
I need to think.
I know.
I immediately know what Meg would be.
Really?
Wait, what?
A sunflower.
Oh,
You
Yeah, because
think?
you're just so like happy. You're like a ray of sunshine. So like
Aw.
comforting, and yeah.
that's so
Aw.
sweet. Oh my
Amy.
God. I was thinking
Thank
lantana. I was thinking something in that orangey pinky family. I don't know. I just associate those bright cheery colors with you, and lantana is just a plant that makes me smile. So I pick lantana.
Aw.
That's
You
cute.
guys are being so sweet. Thank you.
Y'all can be mean to me because I'm the meanest.
I'm like feel under pressure
No,
now.
I
Like I need to
know.
come up with something.
No pressure, no pressure. And then I would say for Dagny, I would go for like Snapdragon, because I feel like they're really pretty. They're really like, I don't know how to
Spicy.
I don't
They're
know how to put it
spicy.
to words, like the vibes. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're just giving me
They're my
Snapdragon
favorite
vibes.
flower.
Oh, well, perfect. I didn't even know that.
I didn't know that either.
But like, I think the name as well, because it's like little snappy dragon, you know?
I'm snappy.
Yeah.
I
A little
know.
bit of a snap.
I love snapdragons because they're kind of like edgy while still being
Mhm.
very pretty.
Yeah, exactly that.
I was thinking like a tree of some kind. I don't know. You're kind of giving tree right now because you have a like.
I am a tree.
Well, no, it's like the opposite. Like your hair is dark brown.
Yes.
But I don't know, like a beautiful, like a dogwood tree.
Dogwood
just
trees
so
are my favorite
pretty.
tree. You guys are freaking
Oh,
me
there you
out.
go.
I have one. Like,
That's so cool.
oh, stop. That's weird.
Like a dogwood tree because it's just like it like blooms in the spring. It's just so delightful.
Yes.
Like it's also one of my favorite trees. I think to just
It's a good
see
one.
it just puts a dogwood tree puts a smile on your face when you drive by it, and that's what I associate with you.
This is like turning way too nice.
Say something
Are
mean.
we all gonna cry soon?
I know.
Oh, Amy. Let's see. I want something like viney, like trailing and unique. Let's see.
I was gonna say calendula flower
That's a good one.
because I feel like calendula is just an all-around great garden plant. I feel like you're just an all-around great person.
Aw.
Also, your hair, like the hue it is right now, it's kind of like reminding me of calendula
Orangey.
or maybe like a marigold as well.
Ooh.
But also just all of your like DIY things that you do. I just feel like
Yes.
calendula is like that versatile flower in the garden that you can do so many things, and you just teach people so many
That's
things that you
cute.
can do.
Love
Oh my
that.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna go with Snap Pea because they remind me of fairies, and you're our garden fairy. And also, they're like a harbinger of good things. Like you get them in the spring and you get them in the fall. It's something to look forward to. It just makes me very happy. And they're beautiful. And you're
Yeah.
beautiful.
Oh, thanks.
That's so true.
Thank
I
you.
know.
Do we have a horrible question now?
I know.
I know, right?
How else are you gonna poison your enemies, Meg? Okay.
Give them some witch's ointment.
Not the ointment.
That's gonna make sense to nobody who didn't watch that episode.
Yeah,
It's
I
great.
know.
You better watch all our episodes.
Someone just sent me a question that says, killing slugs / snails? So I'm gonna turn that question into like, how do you feel about killing garden pests? Do you feel like that's okay? Is it something that you do? Obviously, Meg, you kill the horrible venomous spiders, but like, How do you feel about the other pests?
I try not to kill anything, but like if there's no other option, then I don't have a problem with it. Like I try not to kill any. I mean, obviously, I have an all organic garden. I don't spray anything in my garden, even organic. So I try to save the pests for the good bugs to eat. But if there's a really bad infestation of something, like I said, I pick off the cabbage worms by hand and I feed them to the chickens, and I don't feel bad about that. At least the chickens are eating them, and my plants are not just being decimated.
Yeah.
So it's like try to do no harm,
Mhm.
but if you have to, then you have to.
Yep.
And
How do you
Yeah,
feel, Dagny?
I don't spray it all either. For me, it comes down to like if a pest is putting things out of balance, right? Like I assume for the most part, if I have aphids and I wait a couple weeks, the ladybugs are going to move in. They're going to take care of the problem. So I don't really care about aphids in my garden. The only exceptions for me that are like a hard and fast rule are hornworms, is they just do so much damage so fast. Like a single hornworm took out an entire plant for me in like 6 hours. And the cabbage white butterfly larva, because they're relentless.
any type of damaging worm or caterpillar, it's like if you don't kind of take care of it, then it can really get out of control really, really quickly. But sometimes I think it is necessary to sacrifice some plants, like for the sake of the beneficial insects. Like if I have a kale plant, one of many that's kind of infested with aphids, I'll just leave it because like you said, Dagny, I know the ladybugs are going to show up eventually.
Mhm.
They may not be there yet, but if I need to sacrifice that plant, then I will. But if you don't have a large garden and there's more at stake, I don't think that there's anything wrong with hand picking things off and killing it.
I quite often will give slugs to my ducks, and I feel like that's quite nice to give them some more food to eat, basically. I was picking off the caterpillars from some of my brassicas this year, and I got a message from someone saying, there are no butterflies, like, please leave your caterpillars alone. And to be honest, I was like, yeah, fair point, because I didn't see that many butterflies this year. It was quite a weird year for butterflies. It seemed like there weren't really any. So eventually I just left them, and that's why my brassicas are destroyed. But at least there were more butterflies. There are a couple of times where if there's like loads of aphids or loads of something, I will just wash it off with water just to like reduce the numbers a bit. I don't thoroughly kill anything. I don't like wipe out anything entirely from my garden. But yeah, I would say also like even organic pesticides, anything that is like a pesticide basically, is going to end up killing things that it's not targeting. So I try not to use anything like that. I think that's it. Yeah, it's a touchy subject. It's a controversial one, but
It
Yeah.
is.
It is. And I even feel controversial sometimes. Like I did feel controversial about the spiders. Like as I was killing them, I was like, should I even be doing this? But I was like, I don't want to get bitten in my garden. This is a venomous spider. And I don't know.
yeah.
It just you have to weigh the risks with the benefits
Yeah.
sometimes.
So it's a safety
And
concern.
sometimes a lot of times it is beneficial to just leave the bugs alone. It's more oftentimes it's going to be more beneficial to your garden, to your ecosystem, to just let nature.
Mm-hmm.
But again, you just have to weigh it for your, like if you're a balcony gardener and you only have a few plants, like obviously you want to try to keep those plants alive. If you have a larger garden, it's not really going to make that much of a difference. If you have a couple of plants that die from pests or whatever, so just leave them. So it's like, yeah, it's all personal preference.
Yeah.
So my next question is, what are your favorite cookbooks right now?
Ooh. I actually am in need of cookbook recommendations right now. I do not have a favorite. Like, I've had a few cookbooks where I just cook one recipe from it, and then I just keep cooking that one recipe, and then I'm like, okay, done with that cookbook now. So I feel like I need a cookbook that has loads of really usable recipes in it. I think I buy ones that are just far too complex.
I have one. I'm going to go
Okay.
grab it.
Is Meg gonna bring out her own book?
No. So, if you need a recommendation, I really recommend this book. It's called 6 Seasons, and it is basically a gardening cookbook. So it is called Six Seasons because the author believes that there are really 6 seasons when it comes to gardening. And it has recipes for each like gardening season. So there's recipes for spring, and then season 2 is early summer, and then midsummer, and then late summer, and then fall, and then winter. And I just think it's really, really clever to separate summer into 3 different seasons because it is like that, especially here in North Carolina. You have different crops coming in at these different times, and it's not always like black and white. So yeah, I really love this book. There's a ton of really great recipes in here too, and it's like thick. It's huge. There's so many recipes.
Okay, I need
and
it.
I've made several of them. Yeah.
I feel like this time of year, I don't know what to eat because, like, all those summer recipes, I just don't want to eat them anymore. I need like slightly more cozy food, but it's not like full cozy season yet. So I'm kind of like in between.
Soup. A lot of
Yeah,
soup.
I feel like you would like this book then because
Mhm.
it like it'll tell you we're in fall now. And wait, let me see. We're in fall now, so it says like in fall there's beets, Brussels sprouts, carrots, Swiss chard, collards, kale, mushrooms, and it's just recipes involving all of those crops
Nice.
that are typically fall crops. But yeah, that's my favorite one right now. Anyway,
Love it.
I feel like it changes all the time. Each new cookbook I get is like my favorite for a little bit.
Same.
I would say anything by Alice Waters. I don't know if you guys have read her We Are What We Eat book, but it was life-changing. Like, it's really, really good. It's all about slow food and how the fast food culture is dehumanizing us, and just the valuing biodiversity and seasonality and all of that. Like, it's a beautiful, beautiful book. I don't know, I can't even remember if that one specifically has recipes in it. I know a lot of times she kind of intersperses recipes in with what she's writing, but she does have a recipe book as well. I'm trying to remember what the name of it is. The recipe book from Alice Waters is called "This Art of Simple Food." That's the one that has mostly recipes, but We Are What We
I'll have to
Eat
look into that one.
is a very beautiful book in general, just to read about food.
There you go, Amy. You got some.
Yeah.
You got like 3 recommendations.
I need them. I need them all. Or if anyone listening has any recommendations for cookbooks, please comment. I would love to know. I always need cookbook recommendations. I'm in a rut.
All right. What's the most unusual thing you've ever used as a gardening tool?
Oh,
I don't know.
that's a tricky one.
I don't know if this really counts as a tool, but you know what? We're going with it. It's our podcast. So I have taken packing tape. This is after me saying that I don't kill aphids, but this is a long time ago. I have taken packing tape. Actually, I think it was to potato bugs, which also are the worst. And I have used that to kind of stick them from the leaf when there's like tons and tons of them. And I've used that to remove them from the leaves, which feels kind of cruel, but I did then squish them so they didn't have like a long, slow, sticky death. But I would say packing tape.
I've done that as well with squash bug eggs.
Yeah.
That's a really easy way to remove squash bug eggs. I think the weirdest tool, I guess this could count as a tool, is a syringe because I have injected BT into my pumpkin vines to stop the squash vine borer. BT is just it stands for Bacillus thuringiensis, which is like a bacteria. So it's like an all organic option, which I don't use anymore because honestly, I didn't really find it that effective. But I did. So I have I still have the box of syringes in my greenhouse, and I did have a friend visit me one time, and I was showing them around the greenhouse, and they were just like, "Why do you have a box of needles in your greenhouse?" And I was like, "It is not what it looks like. I'm injecting. I'm performing, surgeries and things on my squash vines."
Normal stuff.
But she did not think that. She was like, she
Really?
looked at me very concerned.
I just use a lot of rubbish in my garden. I use like all the packaging that vegetables and things come in, like little plastic trays to make seed trays. My garden's just like full of rubbish, basically. So yeah, I feel like people would look at my greenhouse and think that that's kind of weird. Like, why am I dumping all that stuff there? But it's actually to be used.
I've used a chopstick before to
Mm.
like make a holes for seeds.
Same.
Chopstick is very useful in the garden.
Oh, I've used an embroidery hoop. That's like
Oh, yeah.
the thing that I upcycled to make my herb dryer from. So I just put
Yeah,
like
that's so cute.
a piece of cloth in between the hoop, and then that makes like a little platform to put all your flowers on to dry, and then I tie strings from the bottom and you can hang like the bunches of herbs from it. It's literally behind me right now.
Oh, cute.
Those herbs have been on there for like 2 months.
That's a winter project.
Yep. Sort that out later.
Honestly, hanging herbs just becomes like decorum for me because I'll hang them
Yeah.
and then just forget about them and I'll never use them. It's just decor at this
Just looks
point.
cute. If you could make any hybrid plant, what would your dream hybrid be?
I feel like this should be possible, but I don't know why it hasn't been done if it is. But why can't we make strawberries grow on like vines? Like, why can't we have berries on vines like that? That would be so nice.
That actually would be so
Because you
nice
could
to get
keep
them up off the ground.
exactly
Yeah.
away from all the munching bunnies and slugs.
Yeah. That would actually be so nice. So that would be crossing like
I wonder if you could cross it with like a sweet pea or something.
That would
Yeah.
make the best plant.
This is a thing. I feel like I just invented something.
I feel like I've heard of like a vertical strawberry variety or something, but I don't know if it was real.
So there are vining strawberries.
Wait, what? I've never heard of that.
On hold, please. I don't know if it's vining strawberries or if they just train the runners to grow up a trellis.
Ooh. I kind of want to try that now.
I
Because if you think about it, that would work, maybe.
You need to have soil for it to root into, don't you? Well, I guess it gets some
Yeah.
nutrients from the like original plant, but I don't know if it would be enough to fruit into. I don't know.
Yeah.
Strawberries are nuts. Hold on. What? The strawberry is an aggregate fruit to which the small yellow strawberry seeds, also known as nutlets, are attached. This means that
Nutlets.
strawberries are in fact nuts and so-called collective nut fruits.
What?
Okay.
I don't know.
How does that make any sense?
Climbing?
I did know that strawberries are not technically berries at all.
Right.
A lot of the berries aren't technically berries. I didn't know they were nuts.
Then a watermelon is a berry.
So like botanically, they're nuts.
There's one article. I don't know how trustworthy it is. I've never heard this before. They're nutlets. I didn't know nutlets was a thing. It just says climbing strawberries are like ordinary strawberry plants. They just form runners that can climb using a support. They are not climbing plants as such because they cannot hold on to anything with their runners and cannot grow upwards on their own. So no, what I want does not exist. Which is funny because strawberries are in the rose family. So you'd think that you'd be able to cross them with some kind of climbing rose, right? I don't know how hybrids work, but I feel like this should be a thing.
So this says that strawberries are not considered nuts. They're a type of fruit known as aggregate accessory fruit, meaning the fruit part we eat doesn't actually come from the plant's ovary, but from the flower's receptacle. That's what makes it not a berry.
I would love to see the source on this article that decided the strawberries are nuts.
I think I would try to cross a pineapple and a watermelon because I just think that that would be an interesting flavor. I love pineapple so much, and I also love like those like two of my favorite fruits. I would just cross them and see like what would happen. Like imagine a pineapple but in the shape of a watermelon.
That sounds so good.
Without all of the like spines that you have to cut off.
I
That'd
know
be
when you
great.
get a pineapple, like you have to
Yes.
throw like half of it in the compost. It's so annoying.
Yeah, that's the most difficult thing about pineapple, but I
Mhm.
love pineapple so much. And if it could grow like a watermelon, that means I could actually grow it here in North
That
Carolina.
would be great.
That would be amazing.
My dream hybrid plant would be something with like multiple uses. Like I love a plant that has like edible leaves, edible flowers, that kind of thing. So I was also going to go along like the strawberry route because who doesn't love strawberries? Strawberries are amazing. But like with some really tasty leaves would be perfect. Or even like crunchy asparagus-y stems, you know? Just something that has like 3 different uses, amazing berries, really tasty leaves, maybe like strawberries with minty flavored leaves that you could use
I was
with
gonna say
berries.
mint.
Yeah,
Yes.
that would be so good.
That sounds good.
That's the dream.
Yeah, I vote that one.
Minty flavored
Actually.
strawberry leaves.
Minty strawberries.
Yeah. Someone make that a thing, please.
I mean, you can eat strawberry leaves and make tea,
But
but
they,
it's not minty.
They just don't
no,
taste
they
good.
No.
taste kind of like spinachy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they just taste like earth.
Yeah, they taste very green.
Like they have a very earthy. Yeah. Okay, so I think for the last question I got is, who is your podcast dream guest?
That's tricky. Okay. There are so many like British gardeners that I feel like we could have on here. Like, I feel like everyone would love Monty Don. Everyone loves Monty Don. His voice is so relaxing. And also Charles Dowding is kind of an obvious choice. He can tell us everything about no dig. Can you imagine Charles Dowding in a conversation with us?
I cannot, but I'm going to manifest this. I don't know if he could handle us.
You'd probably just be like, what?
Who are these girls?
Yeah.
Carol Klein. I love Carol Klein. She's a gardening legend, and I've met her once, and she's just such a nice lady. She's really cool. So I'd like to have Carol Klein on here just for a chat.
My mind is immediately going to someone food related, and just someone who I've always like looked up to, and like I use their cookbook all the time, like Gordon Ramsay. I would love for him to just like come to my garden and like go through the garden, call me an idiot sandwich, and then let's go cook something together, and then also be on the podcast. Like that was the question. I would love for him to be on the podcast, but I'd also love for him to just come to my house and cook with me
And shout
from
at
the
you.
garden and shout at me. Like, yeah,
Please yell at us, Gordon.
please yell at me. I would love it.
Honestly, I was leaning towards other like really strong female creators because I always just want to pick their brains and figure out how they got where they are and their mindset on things. Like Susie would be a really fun one. Justine would be a really fun one. We have to have Carmen on. Carmen's just the queen.
Yeah.
Like,
I also probably should have said Hugh Fernley Whittingstall, because you guys need to go back and watch his TV shows from like the early 2000s. He did this show where he would like grow vegetables, and then he'd go foraging, and then he'd also raise animals for meat, which I know isn't everyone's thing, but it was just so much like outdoorsy, naturey, foodie stuff, and then he'd make loads of like really good recipes. And I just feel like he has so much knowledge in like the whole, like everything surrounding gardening, and he has loads of books on all of those different things as well. So he'd be a really good guest to have on here and ask him loads of questions. You need to watch his shows. I will send them to you.
Okay.
They're really good.
I will.
I'm also just going to throw this out there. Martha Stewart.
Oh, please. Please, Martha.
We have to have you on, Martha. She has a new, have you guys seen her new like show on Roku or whatever? It's like Martha's Gardens.
No.
It's actually really interesting. She just like takes people through her gardens. There was just an episode about how she like hired goats to come and clean out the weeds and stuff. And it was so cute.
So wholesome.
And I was like, Martha, I want to be you.
I think that's all the questions we have time for today, but let us know in the comments if you have any more questions for us, because we can always do another Q&A episode. And you can find us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. So make sure you're following us there if you want to catch our next episode, and we'll see you next week.